Hi everybody, this is Cynthia Kane again for UL100ZB, Research Skills, Information, and Technology. And in this tutorial, I will be going over Quiz 1, our Evaluate and Manage discussion for our engagement activity, and finally, Learning Assessment 3 for this week of Evaluate and Manage, which will cover the evaluation of sources. As we always emphasize, please be sure before you start an engagement activity or a learning assessment that you have gone through our video tutorials first. So before you start in on any of these, make sure that you have watched the Evaluate video tutorial and also the Manage video tutorial. Then, after you watch this tutorial for the learning assessment and engagement activities, you'll be set to go. So the first part that I want to go over is Quiz 1 for checkpoint number 1 in this course. As you know by this point, an 8-week course goes by very, very quickly. And so at this time, after we've gone through week 1 and week 2 of Identify and Scope and Plan and Gather, if you would like to earn some engagement credit points, you could go ahead and take our first quiz for a total of 10 points. And when I go in here, there are 10 questions. You'll see one question at a time. You can use our textbook for chapters 1 through 4 so far, and any material on the course site that we have covered, and we actually encourage you to use these materials in order to answer the questions correctly. You can retake the quiz up to 3 times. The highest score on your quiz will actually count for up to 10 engagement credit points. So that's a good way of earning some extra points, and also, again, just serving as a checkpoint to see what you've learned so far in the course. Now we'll go back. And the second engagement activity that you can do for this week is a discussion thread on Evaluate and Manage. So to complete this one, the first thing you would do is watch this video, The Punishable Perils of Plagiarism. And this will actually go through some dangers on plagiarizing and some things to be aware of, because remember that it's always very easy to plagiarize or take somebody's ideas without giving them proper credit, sometimes without even intending to do it. But we really need to be aware of the fact that if we are borrowing ideas, whether they are direct quotes or paraphrasing from another person or another author, another source, we've got to give that author or source proper credit in citation styles and also in in-text citations when we're writing a research paper. After you watch the video, we want you to respond with your own thoughts about a time in which you might have struggled in terms of writing a paper or creating a presentation with whether or not to cite or to give credit to other authors in this work. Why did you struggle? And why can the concept of plagiarism be a challenge in scholarly work? I would encourage you to write a paragraph for this response of about 5 to 6 sentences. Really put some thought into it and go beyond, yes, I did struggle, or no, I did not struggle. If you actually just respond with a very short response, that's probably not going to give you credit for 5 points. So put some thought and some effort into this. And I think that you'll find that you're going to have some interesting things to say about this. Finally, we are ready for our third learning assessment, the evaluation of sources. Now, we're actually leading up in another week or so to introduce you to the web portfolio that you will create as a culminating learning assessment for UL100. The web portfolio is actually going to bring together a number of things. Remember that we've encouraged you in your research plan to pick a topic that you're really interested in, and it could be something that you're researching for another class, or it could be something of personal interest. And find out everything that you can about it. You are not writing a research paper for this course. Keep that in mind. But you will be creating a portfolio. And part of the portfolio will be compiling a list of recommended resources. In other words, books, websites, journal articles, podcasts, YouTube videos, anything else that you find out there that you would recommend somebody read if they didn't know anything about your topic. Well, this is a start on the recommended resources assignment. For the evaluation of sources, what we're going to have you do is think about awareness is knowledge, and knowledge is power. So we have to be aware when we are looking for sources for a topic if they're actually going to be credible or reliable. And we talked about this in one of our previous video tutorials for the evaluate and also for the manage. So to complete this assessment, you're going to download this worksheet first that will walk you through the evaluation sources. And I'm going to show you the worksheet now. Here we are. And the evaluation of sources worksheet will actually walk you through the process of doing this assessment. So what we want you to do with this particular assessment is to find two sources of information. One source needs to be a primary source of information. The other source really needs to be a secondary source of information. Please return to last week's tutorial if you're still a little bit unclear about some of the distinctions between a primary source and a secondary source of information. So what you would do with your first source of information is do a citation for it, either in MLA style or in APA style, whatever you're comfortable using, but it does have to be a correct citation. And then you need to say, is this source a primary source or a secondary source? Why? Why are you identifying it this way? And then answer all of these other questions very comprehensively. So in other words, let's look at this bullet point. How, if at all, does the content of this source apply to your topic? You really need to go beyond just saying, yes, the content of the source applies to my topic. Explain in detail. I would look at about 5 or 6 sentences for each of these bullet points. So really explain them in detail. And you see, we're going to ask you to look for biases or unsupported claims. Look for any footnotes or endnotes or bibliographies at the end of the source. That happens very often with journal articles. Is the source current enough for your topic? So think about your topic and whether you need really up-to-date current information, or if you're also going to have to include historical or background information, again, to explain it clearly to someone who doesn't know anything about your topic. And on this last part, on a scale to 1 through 5, where 1 means poor and 5 means excellent, how would you rate the overall quality of this source and why? Again, go beyond just saying something like, I give this a 4 because it's a good source. That's really not going to be enough for a complete assessment. And then do the same thing with citation number 2. And I'm going to go back here to the guidance on our learning assessment. So in order to find these sources of information, you can use the ESU Discovery Search to find books. You can use our databases to find articles. You could even use Google or Google Scholar. And again, if you can, try to find it, if at all possible, 1 primary source of information and 1 secondary source. Make sure, particularly on your secondary source, like a magazine article or a journal article, make sure that it is available in full text, because you've got to read the entire article in order to be able to determine if it's going to be a good source or not and apply evaluation criteria in that way. We've given you some links down here. We've talked a little bit about APA citation style help at Purdue Online Writing Lab, and also at Purdue, the MLA citation style help. I've actually included 2 additional sources of information. Excelsior College has an online writing lab for APA and MLA as well, and these can be incredibly helpful. I'm going to go ahead and click on Excelsior College. And when you go over here to APA references, you see that Excelsior College, like the Purdue Online Writing Lab, has some great links to help you figure out how to cite a source correctly. So if I went to an article from a database, this will help me see what I am actually supposed to do in terms of citing my information correctly. And keep in mind, when we're back here at the library's webpage, and if I went to databases, and if I went to the PsycInfo database, for example, And if I did a search for eating disorders and adolescence, I'm just going to use that as a sample topic. Keep in mind that many databases, and this is a good example, will have a cite or a citation tools feature that will help you find the appropriate format for a source. So for example, here's an APA style citation for this specific article. And if I happen to be doing MLA instead, here's my MLA one. But always remember, even if you are copying and pasting these into your evaluation of sources learning assessment, that you may have to reformat some of these items. So you need to look at our different sites that we've given you for APA citation and MLA citation to see if there's anything you need to change. Is something capitalized that shouldn't be capitalized? Is something italicized that shouldn't be? You've got to check those very, very carefully because a lot of those citation tools simply are not going to be accurate. And when we go down here, this is the grading rubric that we will use to grade your evaluation of sources assignment and identify if it is incomplete or complete. Again, keep in mind that with the learning assessments that this is the way that we grade them. So if something is incomplete, it means that one or more of the criteria here have not been quite completed on your end, and you will need to go back and fill that out completely and then resubmit the assignment for it to be considered as complete. As always, if you have any questions about your learning assessments or the engagement activities, please contact me in advance of the due dates. ckane1@emporia.edu, and then we can talk about what's going on. We're going to go back here. So the learning assessment number 3, evaluation of sources, will be due by 11:59 p.m. on November 1st. Remember, you have a 2-day grace period, so if you turn this in by November 3rd at 11:59 p.m., you'd still be okay. The Evaluate and Manage discussion is due by November 3rd at 11:59 p.m. Again, with the 2-day grace period, if you submitted that by November 5th at 11:59 p.m., you would still be okay. Quiz number 1 actually is not going to be due until the end of the class on December 6th. But again, if you want to go ahead and complete quiz number 1, that's a really good way of earning some additional engagement credit points. As always, again, contact me if you have any questions or any concerns, and I'm more than happy to help. Good luck, and I hope that you enjoy this next module with the Evaluate and Manage.